we have a chance to take a little bit of a deeper dive, which is my favorite part of the day. This was not a super uplifting set of talks in a way, right? We heard about all kinds of controversies, privacy, ownership, replacement, seeding control. You left us with some frightening questions. So let me stay on that vein and just ask you, each of you, I heard a little bit from Sandra already, but what keeps you up at night? You're working in this area, so if you wake up in the middle of the night, you can go to sleep. What's going through your mind? Nicole, you want to start?
I will say I think I probably have maybe the most positive outlook of the group when it comes to the application of AI and machine learning. I look at it as, there's an element of having to demystify what machine learning is. And essentially it is data, compute resources, and mathematical models and equations. So having a better understanding of the machine learning technique, the algorithms that are being used, as well as the data it's being trained on and how it's being trained on, that's, I would say, where the element of that keeps me up at night. When I saw what happened when generative AI hit the scene, which don't get me wrong, I'm glad it did. Avid user of generative AI, and I think it's had a drastic and positive impact on how humans interact with AI and want to consume it. But when I saw how it was released, the data integrity side really kind of concerned me. We have no guardrails, we have no guidelines as to how should we ensure that the data that we're training on is accurate and doesn't include biased and harmful information. And to pull from Tina's talk earlier, that really comes with a diverse sense of lenses and perspectives of those who are manipulating, cleansing, and filtering the data to ensure that, because you can't do that with just one perspective. And so that, I would say, the element is just ensuring good data going in, good data going out, and then how do we operationalize it? How do we control it? How do we facilitate the most best use case for it? So from a data science standpoint, really looking at those accuracy benchmarks, confidence solicitation, and pushing the boundaries in that capacity. Otherwise, I do think that it has the ability to really bring valuable insight and intelligence at scale to large data sets. So I actually look at the benefit of it far outweighs it. We just have to do it right, safely and securely.
So how can we make that happen?
I think policy, I think governance, I think frameworks is a big component of it. But I think it really drives with research-led organizations like Stanford and industry to push the data integrity process, to push the testing, evaluation, and validation process. I think it really also talks about specific use cases, the right machine learning techniques for that, the right data for it, and holding corporations accountable. I know they have a summit at the end of the month in DC for the Office of National Cyber Directorate on software liability. I expect they're going to have the same thing for AI, where we are going to look at, kind of the same types of principles, do no harm, that you would have in most of the industries that we support, ensuring the same with AI.
So you think more regulation will come?
I think more regulation will come, but I think in the same sense, we also have to learn from some of our neighboring countries where we also don't want to stifle innovation, because the criminals aren't going to be stifling innovation. So we just have to make sure that we're doing it smartly. And that really requires pulling together global experts, different perspectives, and putting the right framework in place to do it safely and effectively.
Okay, well, let's go to your bad dreams at night, Zanele. What keeps you up?
I guess I would say I also am optimistic about how AI can increase productivity. And I think the thing that keeps me up at night is thinking about, how will the benefits of this technology be distributed? I'm concerned about whether there'll be this kind of returns to scale, kind of rich get richer dynamic, where people who already have skills that are complementary to AI benefit, and others are not receiving equal access, equal benefits of the increased productivity. So I think that I think that one way we can deal with this problem is thinking about how do we have policy frameworks that allow there to be support for the most vulnerable people in our population, and how do we think about retraining and worker opportunity and worker power, which in the U.S. Over the past 20 years has really been really had a lot of setbacks in terms of worker power.
Sandra.
Yes, absorbing everything. From the creative industry's point of view, this is definitely going to be a defining era where IP, especially, and originality will be challenged. So I think that's what gets me up in the morning. I don't like to stay up late. Yeah, so I'd say that's going to be the main thing that we're going to be seeing regulations on and governance. And I think that inadequate governance in that space will lead to job loss and even loss of human creativity if we don't get stronger on the governance around IP and originality.
See, a lot of people, you mentioned fake videos, and a lot of people are really concerned about this election year and what fake news and fake videos may
Yes.
give us. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, if anything was going to keep me up at night, that would probably be it.
Yeah, that's what I thought you would say.
Yeah, it is really, really scary. But I know that all of the large social media companies are looking into plagiarism of information, and it's something that they have to scrutinize because they saw just the drastic impacts that it had in former elections. So, and they are being held accountable, right? They're being drawn into court, and we just don't have a solid rule set or guiding compass yet for this because it's so novel. Wow. And that's where we need to get to for the creative industry so we can thrive, because there's so much potential and beauty. And I know you're going to be sharing a lot of examples today of where art intersects with AI, and there's so much greatness in it too that we can't forget.
No, it's always an interesting question to me. These new developments come so fast and so furious, and seems to go faster and faster. And sometimes I think I just cannot keep up because I'm menopausal, but maybe it's just because they're coming up so fast. But here's an interesting question for me. If you could put those beasts back in their cages, all this new software, would you?
I would not. AI has been around for 50 years. Machine learning is not new. It's just now become publicly available and accessible in natural languages. I think that, for me, I look at it as there is a net positive in being able to augment humans, especially in the security arena. Burnout is a real thing. Threat hunters, SOC analysts, data science and security, it's trauma, essentially. You are going through very critical, scary situations, having to make on-demand decisions with very little data exposed to you, and AI and machine learning can just help with augmenting them to provide them more data, a better complete picture. It uplifts them to be able to think more strategically, more broader across the entire dynamic event that's going on. So I think the net gain is very much there, but I think it comes down to the same principles that we've had for every tech revolution, for the cloud security revolution, for data, for privacy. We need to apply the same principles that we've gone through in several tech revolutions over the last several decades to the one we're in right now.
What about you, Zanele?
So I wouldn't put, AI, generative AI is, like the internet, is a general purpose technology, and it's going to have these long run, valuable economic productivity gain benefits. I would put, there are some individual applications, verticals of uses of AI and generative AI that I would, if I could put them back into the box, I would. I think in particular, these applications that are being used to further the exploitation of women and children in terms of generative, multimodal videos. I think, along the regulation side, I think we should really think about how to, regulate these individual applications and verticals versus thinking about how do we put, how do we put the general technology in a box?
How about you, Sandra?
No. Like the answer is clear for me. I think that we, as human beings, we're always resistant to change, but then we find a way, like even with the rise of the internet, right? Everyone thought that everything was going to change completely and that we were going to lose touch with each other and we're not going to have like connection and we're not going to be safe and all these things. But I do think that through change, you find a way and you find an avenue where that the human values get surfaced and you're able to kind of draw in on that. And I think that we're going to experience that with AI as well when we start learning how to interact with it. But it's going to be like a learning curve here in the beginning, and there's going to be a lot of kind of scary moments, but that's going to course correct us to the path that we're supposed to be on in this transformation. Very hopeful.
I love your optimism. That's fantastic. Thinking about these new developments, what sort of technologies do you think are going to come our way in the next few years that we haven't seen yet, but maybe from your own expertise and in your field that are going to come, that maybe we should be preparing for? What do you think? 3 years from now, 4 years from now, at this conference, what we will be talking about? We weren't talking about generative AI 3 years ago. No. What do you think is coming? Nicole?
I mean, I kind of alluded to it a little bit in our talk. I do think that there's going to be a rise of autonomous agents. There's been some great research in the last year on multi-hop reasoning that's impacting a lot of even other technical providers like movie recommendation services like Netflix and Apple TV and stuff like that. That same type of applied technology that can increase in complex decision making can be used for good or for bad. So we have to be prepared for the bad, and we have to innovate and work with the good. I think most of the concerns you guys brought up are valid concerns. I think a lot of that comes back to security. We need to be protecting this technology. We need to be protecting these models. We need to be protecting these data sets. And that really comes with a need of cross-skilling. If we look at the cloud innovation adoption, it took a long time to get security practitioners cross-skilled into cloud and bring them along on the journey. We don't have that bandwidth for AI. We need to cross-skill now. And we need to pull security professionals over into AI, into machine learning, and help them understand, and really the data access points. And so locking those down so that we can be prepared for the good and the bad that's going to come.
What do you think, Sandra, in generative design or other areas?
This is such a great question, and I would say on behalf of the creative industries, something I've been reflecting on a lot is not necessarily like a new technology, but it's more economic than that. It's more, I think we're going to see a boom the same way that we saw a decade ago with Uber and Lyft, with everyone getting access to becoming a driver overnight without hardly any credentials, right? I think we're going to see the same thing in creativity, that anyone overnight will be able to become an artist without having the skill because they can prompt, right? So I think we're going to see an era of micro entrepreneurs, and I think that that's the way that a lot of economies are being predicted right now too, is that freelancing is going to go up and up and up and up. And I think that the creative industries is going to play a big role in that, and people are going to be embracing that and trying out new things, like my husband becoming a children's book writer end to end, right? Without having that skill set in his training. So I think that we're going to see more of that.
It's interesting to ask you that question, Zanele, because of course you're working on PhD. So the next best thing that's going to come up is going to be your PhD thesis, right?
No, but I think one area that I've been working on is thinking about the future of robotics and physical robots, and kind of how generative AI systems, ChatGPT, the brain of the robot, thinking about how physical robots are going to both be used in industry, and then also how they can be used in home home production. And so I think one thing we need to be thinking about is, how are we going to do, human-machine collaboration when it comes to physical robots? So I'm sure many of you guys have seen, over the years, these kind of, fun videos of individual robots, the Tesla robot, et cetera. So I think, thinking about kind of how we're going to adapt to society with humanoid robots will be very interesting.
So you mentioned, all of you, at some point in your talk also, this speed at which these changes are coming. You mentioned cross-skilling, upskilling, and so, in other words, you really, when you're looking at this, you really think we have to be very agile. All of us, because there's all these new technologies, we need to stay on top of it as much as possible, understand them so we can use them in good ways. What advice would you have for people in the audience, particularly who are just starting out learning in college or are thinking about retraining and upskilling, how to get that agility in their skill set? What would be your advice?
Always be learning. I'm 25 plus years in my career, and I'm still reading textbooks. I did not know what recursive Bayesian estimation was last year. There are so many incredible courses out there. Stanford has an amazing online AI course that's hella cheap and really fast. Coursera, coming out of this area, has amazing free or free to cheap resources. Crash Course has a whole bunch of great free courses. I recommend, I don't know if any of you guys are really neurodiverse like I am. I love to have podcasts, textbooks read to me at a really fast volume while I'm running, getting those endorphins up, learning new material. I think it's kind of key and critical. And the best thing about this room right here is I'm very excited about the opportunities for you guys to learn and continuously be learning and moving into different areas, because we've talked about this multiple times, but the data that these systems are being trained on is critical. And you can't, my perspective, I am biased. I know they mentioned it before. I have a federal government intelligence community. I am incredibly traumatized and very biased. And I also have just my own unique perspective. I'm not gonna see the flaws in data that you're gonna see, that she offers to point out, that you offer to point out. We need all these different perspectives to make sure that we're using the data properly and that we're also looking at it safely and securely. So I'm just really excited about being in this environment and telling everybody to take all the courses and do all the things.
Sounds good. Quick additions before we close, Sandra? Quick advice?
I don't know how to top Nicole. That was great.
Excellent.
She summed up
Right.
exactly what I was going to say, just like the potential of everyone here.
It's amazing when that works out, right? Don't have to say anything anymore. Zanele, any?
I would say, one thing that's really amazing about this conference is, as Margot pointed out, is this multidisciplinarity, and I think that's going to be really important. And I think it's really important as data scientists. And I think if you can find an area of vertical where you're really passionate about applying data science, I think that can really help you to be kind of set yourself apart, kind of having a set of expertise in a particular area, whether that's health, sustainability, economics, cybersecurity, creative. So I think, being able to kind of apply data science in a particular avenue, I think is going to be, continue to be very important.
Well, thanks so much, all of you, for your talks, for spending some time here.